It was a Friday evening in July, the summer of 1999. A small plane took off from New Jersey just after 8:30, climbing into a hazy sky above the Atlantic coast. On board, a man, his wife, and her sister. They were heading to a family wedding on Martha's Vineyard. They never arrived. The plane hit the water at 9:40 p.m. There was no distress call. John F. Kennedy Jr. was 38 years old. But to understand the end, you have to understand where he was. In September 1995, John Kennedy did something nobody expected. He didn't run for office. He didn't take a job at a white shoe law firm. He launched a magazine. George was unlike anything on the newsstand. The cover of the first issue, supermodel Cindy Crawford, dressed as George Washington, powdered wig and all. The tagline, "Not just politics as usual." The concept was simple and radical at once. Treat politics like pop culture. Make civic life as compelling as celebrity life. The launch was a sensation. The magazine moved nearly 400,000 copies at its peak. Advertisers came. For a moment, it felt like it might actually work. For a man who had been famous his entire life without choosing to be, George was the first thing that was entirely his. Not his father's name, not his family's legacy, his. But by 1997, cracks were forming. Advertisers grew skeptical. Hachette started asking harder questions. The editorial identity that had felt fresh started to feel uncertain. By 1999, the magazine was losing money, and his publisher was close to pulling the plug. George was consuming him, and it wasn't the only thing pulling at him. Her name was Carolyn Bessette, and she was not, by any stretch, what the tabloids made her. Born in White Plains in 1966, raised in Greenwich, Connecticut, she was sharp, funny, and fiercely private by nature. She graduated from Boston University in 1988 and became a publicist at Calvin Klein in the early 90s. People who knew her described someone who was all presence, intensely loyal to her friends, uninterested in performing for anyone she didn't trust. She met John around 1992. The relationship became serious around 1994, and from the start, friends noted something interesting. She was not starstruck, not even a little. This was the most famous single man in America. Carolyn held her ground. She disagreed with him. She challenged him. She didn't need his approval. That, by most accounts, is exactly why he fell for her. The relationship wasn't easy. There were breakups, real tensions, two strong people with very different relationships to the public eye. He had grown up in the spotlight. She had chosen deliberately a career that kept her out of it. That choice was about to be taken from her. But first, there would be one perfect secret moment. On September 21st, 1996, John and Carolyn got married on a remote barrier island off the coast of Georgia, and almost no one knew. Cumberland Island, accessible only by ferry, dense with maritime forest and wild horses and almost no cell signal. Guests were told where they were going only days before. About 40 people attended. The ceremony was held at the First African Methodist Episcopal Church on the island, a tiny candlelit space with no electricity, just flame and wood and the sound of people who loved them. Carolyn wore a pearl gray silk gown designed by a then unknown designer named Narciso Rodriguez. It was his first major commission. The dress launched one of the great fashion careers of the era. John wore a simple navy suit. His cousin Anthony Radziwill stood beside him as best man. Anthony was already ill, but that evening he was there. No media outlet found out until it was over. It was one of the last truly private Kennedy moments in history. They had one day, one perfect, invisible day. The world found out soon enough. Once they were married, the cameras didn't give up. They multiplied. From 1996 onward, Carolyn couldn't walk out of their Tribeca apartment without lenses trained on her. She couldn't go to the pharmacy, the corner store, the park. Photographers followed her everywhere, all day, every day. In February 1997, photographs surfaced of John and Carolyn in Washington Square Park in a visible argument. Tears, a ring pulled off a finger. It ran everywhere. Carolyn had never wanted to be famous. She gave almost no interviews, which only made the press more aggressive. The silence read as mystery. The mystery sold papers. Friends say she found it genuinely distressing. She had built a life around being selective about who she let in. Now everyone was in, uninvited, permanent. By 1998 and 1999, the marriage was under real strain. Carolyn's growing isolation, John's total absorption in George, and the slow, agonizing decline of their closest friend, Anthony Radziwill. And yet, neither of them was ready to walk away, because something else was in the air. In 1998, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan announced he would not seek re-election. His New York Senate seat would be open in 2000. The political world immediately looked to one name. Polls showed John F. Kennedy Jr. would win the seat easily. He had no political enemies. He had spent years with George proving he could navigate between celebrity and power. He told friends he was seriously considering it. What came next is one of history's great open questions. Some close friends believed he was moving toward a run. Others say the magazine's losses, the pressures at home, and Anthony's illness were consuming whatever space the decision required. He never announced. He was 38. There was time. He thought there was time. He was wrong. July 16, 1999. A Friday. The last day of John Kennedy's life. The plan was straightforward. Fly from Essex County Airport in New Jersey to Martha's Vineyard, where his cousin Rory Kennedy was getting married the next day. Drop off Carolyn's sister Lauren at the Vineyard. Then continue to Hyannisport. Carolyn Bessette was 34. Carolyn was 33. John had been a licensed pilot since April 1998, about 15 months, around 300 hours of flight time. That evening, someone suggested he take an instructor along. He declined. They departed at approximately 8:38 p.m. The summer sky had turned hazy. Visibility over the water was poor, the kind of night where the horizon disappears into the air around it, where up and down become suggestions rather than facts. John did not have his instrument rating. That certification, the one that trains pilots to fly by instruments alone, without visual reference to the ground, he had not yet completed. On a clear night, it wouldn't matter. On this night, it mattered everything. Somewhere over the Atlantic, approaching the Vineyard, the plane entered what investigators would later call a graveyard spiral. Spatial disorientation. The body feels level. The instruments say otherwise. Without the training to trust instruments over his senses, the pilot loses the plane. Radar contact was lost at 9:40 p.m. The aircraft struck the water at high speed. There was no distress call. Search teams mobilized after midnight. Coast Guard, Navy, hundreds of personnel across 5 days. On July 21st, wreckage and the bodies of all three were found in 116 feet of water. The NTSB ruling, pilot error, spatial disorientation, 3 people, 1 hazy night, gone. President Clinton ordered Navy vessels to assist the search, an extraordinary gesture for a private citizen. On July 23rd, a memorial service was held at St. Thomas More Church in New York. The ashes of John, Carolyn, and Lauren were scattered at sea. Anthony Radziwill, the best man, the closest friend, died of cancer 6 weeks later. George magazine folded in January 2001. 18 months after John died, the dream he'd built closed its doors. Narciso Rodriguez, the designer of that pearl gray wedding gown, went on to become one of the defining voices in American fashion. John Kennedy Jr. was 38 years old. He never ran for office. He never found out what he was capable of becoming. That question, Senate, Governor, President, is still asked, still unanswered, still alive somehow, because he never got the chance to answer it himself. He was the last Kennedy who made the whole country stop and look. And then he was gone.